Hello, this is Watch All About with another watch review, and in this review we're looking at a watch by Peren. This is called the Hintz. This is just a prototype. It's currently in pre-order. Hopefully everything going well, you should be able to get it if you do order one by October 2020. So this watch is also available with a small seconds hand rather than this rotating disc, but we'll discuss that in a little bit later on. So the Peren Hintz is a homage towards one of Transylvania's most important watchmakers. Peren itself as a brand is from Transylvania, so obviously they're working well towards their roots there. It's inspired by the pocket watch made by a Swiss manufacturer by one of the very first Transylvanian watchmakers called Eugen Hintz. And he was alive 1869 between 1869 and 1962. So what is this watch? Well, it's described as a neo-vintage design code while incorporating elements of art deco composition. That does sound like a load of marketing baloney, but I certainly understand the neo-vintage design coming through, and I actually really like it. It's very, very subtly different to many other watches in the same kind of feel, and it's got a few nice little tweaks here and there which we'll discuss. So what's the price then? The pre-order is Swiss francs 496 for the standard movement, or the Elabore movement is 596 francs. So that's £415 for the standard, around £500 for the Elabore movement. The movement is the ETA Unitas 6498-1 as well. So it is a real cool hand crank of a movement, and it's a movement that is found in many pocket watches as well. So obviously that's a cool little nod there. So without further ado, let's discuss the rest of the specs then. So let me just pop it on. So please keep in mind as we go through this review that this is just a prototype. So I've got about a 7-inch wrist for reference. So this is 42.5mm diameter. It has a 10.6mm height and a lug-to-lug length of 49.5mm. So yes, it is on the slightly large side of things. Obviously many watches which are sort of pocket watch themed do tend to be on the larger side, and just the design ethos of it as well is quite aviator kind of themed, I find. Like a big pilot kind of feel to it. They're also around the 42mm mark as well. So yes, whilst it is on the large side for a watch in general, I feel for the style of watch it's actually on point. Just beware, you know, 42.5mm, it is a large size, so if you do have a relatively small wrist, you may not be able to pull it off. However, the 10.6mm height is relatively slender. Obviously the movement itself, the Unitas 6498-1, is relatively thin because it is hand wind only. There's no automatic capabilities there. So the movement itself is relatively thin, and that's obviously being passed through and down to the case height. So relatively easy to wear. In addition, the weight is only 76 grams on this leather strap. So again, quite nice and light, easy to wear because of that light weight. The water resistance is 10 atmospheres or 100 meters, so that is actually genuinely a bit of a surprise. I would have thought it would be less, 50 meters or 5 atmospheres, because at the end of the day it is hand wind and it's just a push-pull crown. But that's good to know in case you do accidentally have any accidents. However, do not swim with this. You don't want to do that. I've mentioned already the movement ETA Unitas 6498-1, and the accuracy of this one, I've measured this one and it's minus 1.9 seconds a day, which is actually really impressive. We might as well talk about that movement briefly. Up to 50 hours of power reserve, 17 joules in here as well. It's got a low beat rate of 18,000 beats per hour, and you can hear the ticking relatively loud. You know, these are well known as being pretty hard-wearing tractor movements. They're nicely described as. It's very relaxing being able to listen to it actually, and obviously it's only manual wind, no automatic winding here. It's a reliable, but it's a simple movement, non-hacking either, so you will never be able to get it set accurately, perfectly. However, with the rotating disc rather than a small seconds hand, that's not really an issue because you're never going to get it perfect because there is no actual hand to indicate where the disc should be. However, if you were going for the alternative version with the small seconds hand, then yes, maybe that would be a bit of a pain for you. And this movement started in the 1950s, so it has loads of heritage. Loads of people happy to work on these bad boys as well, because, you know, many watchmakers start off with these because they're so large, easy to use and easy to work with as well. So a very, very good choice. And I think it ties in really nicely with the fact that, you know, the whole watch in itself is inspired by a pocket watch. So finally, lug width 22mm, so that works nicely with the 45.5mm diameter case, and a 2-year warranty with this watch as well. Okay, so that's all the specs discussed. Now let's discuss the watch in detail. So let's start off with the dial. So there's a couple of key things that I really, really like about this dial. First of all, it's the off-white colour. It's almost like a bit of an eggshell kind of colour. It's not even a creamy or a champagne-y colour. It has like a very light green hue to it, and I think that works really, really nicely, especially with the next thing that I really, really like, and that is the embossed two-tone numerals and the border surrounding the dial as well. It has sort of like a purple paint for the actual numerals themselves, and then a very light peachy kind of border to it. Really, really unusual colour scheme, I've got to admit, that I've never seen a watch like this before, but I really like it. It really catches the eye. It's subtle enough as well to not be too jarring or anything like that. But when you look at it, you're like, oh, that is actually really nice. You know, these pink hues, peachy hues, and the purple accents work really, really nicely. When you take into the whole dial into consideration as well, you know, the numerals, the layout of the dial, the simplicity, really does bring across that neo-vintage design vibe that Peren say that they're after, which is good. You know, it's very, very classic, and it has that kind of aviator vintagey kind of feel to it, and I think it's well balanced as well. It's easy to read, nice and bold and simple in its execution as well. The hands are typical syringe shaped, nothing too exciting, but again they have that kind of peachy feel to them as well, which is nice to see. The loom is quite interesting. I'll give you a loom shot now. Relatively strong loom actually, Superluminova BGW9 used on the hands, which is a good thing. Nice strength on that good quality loom used. So finally, one last thing, which is really their key design element on this watch, and their key feature, and that is the rotating disc at 6 that's been used instead of a running seconds hand on this version. So you ready for some marketing spiel? Its rotation represents the extension of the perennial philosophy transmitted from generation to generation. If you're anything like me, that means absolutely nothing and it's a load of marketing rubbish, then phew, at least I'm not the only one. Let's just put that to one side. What is cool about it, however, is that it is inspired by the Andesite Sun Stone, found next to one of the most precise ancient calendars located in Transylvania. So again, another nice nod to their homeland, Peren's homeland, obviously Transylvania. And it's cool that it is an exact representation of this Andesite sunstone, converted apparently from meters to millimeters. So that's pretty cool as well. It's an exact, like, scaled down version of that sunstone. So because it is a rotating disc, as I mentioned previously, there's no way of knowing exactly. If you're one of those people who is a sucker for perfectly setting your time, this is not the watch for you, because there's no way of telling when the actual second should be at, because the disc is basically the same all around, it's just rotating. Whereas if that doesn't bother you, then it is a nice design touch. And it's got a really nice story behind it as well, which is really good to see. Very rarely do you see watches with, you know, genuine inspiration behind it nowadays. So that's a really good point. So moving on to the case. So this is one key thing you need to be made aware of, because this is just a prototype. There's a couple of things with this case that will be different. First of all, the crown is not signed on this version. It will have the Peren logo embossed on the end. And finally, the case back itself will have some very, very tiny bits of information engraved around the outside. Obviously the case back is predominantly exhibition window anyway, showcasing this awesome movement, and this movement is the main reason behind the large size of the case. Let's be honest, look at it, it takes up pretty much most of the space. So yeah, there's two things to keep in mind. However, the general finishing of the case is really nice. So we have brushed sides and then polished tops of the lugs, and a very slightly brushed edge around the bezel, and a polished rim as well. So a nice array of finishing, nothing to complain about. It is a pretty standard barrel shape, as you can see, no sort of curvature or anything like that. However, it's really nicely machined, no complaints there at all. And as I mentioned previously, the case back, predominantly just a big fat exhibition window, but this surround has a nice polished sort of groove to it as well, and polished underside of the lug. So in general, very nicely machined, and I like the fact that the movement and the dial does most of the talking. You know, there's a very slender amount of space around the outside, so in reality the case isn't doing a whole lot, shall we say, in terms of the general feel and design of the watch itself. The crystal, sapphire crystal, which is good. It is ever so slightly double domed, so you do get an ever so slight bit of distortion, which is pretty cool to see. However, the fact that it's double domed is good, because obviously that will counteract with each other. It's got double anti-reflective coating on both sides as well, top and bottom, which is quite unusual, and the anti-reflective coating is very good, to be fair. Obviously the matte basis of the dial helps the fact that it's really nice and clear and crisp and easy to read anyway, but the double domed sapphire crystal with this anti-reflective coating helps that as well. So all in all, the case is really good. The finishing and the design of the dial, very nice as well, so that's good. Moving on to the strap, really nothing to discuss here, because again, this is I get the impression this is just any old strap that's been slapped on, because this is just a prototype. There's not much point in discussing the buckle either, because the buckle in reality is going to be signed, it's going to be custom buckle with the real deal, so there's no point in talking about that. So yeah, that's pretty much it. I mean, I haven't had it for too long, and obviously I'm going to send it on to the next reviewers, but I have been able to wear it a good few times, and I have been able to get my thoughts together on this watch, and in reality I really like it. Now, for the pre-order price of £415 or 496 Swiss francs for the standard movement, or for this movement, the Elabore movement, 596 Swiss francs or £500, I actually think it's pretty good value for money. Obviously it is Swiss made as well, so let's keep that in mind. The general fit and finish is pretty much spotless. Considering this is a prototype, I have been impressed by it. I do like the design cues as well. Yes, if you were to glance at it, you would think, okay, yeah, it's a pretty bog standard watch really, nothing too exciting about it. But I really like the fact that it has a story behind it, has genuine inspiration, the unusual little rotating disc as well used on the dial, and the colour scheme is really nice as well. So I have been, I'm happy recommending this watch. I think it's really nice in construction and in design, but still relatively straightforward and relatively simple as well. So well done, Peren, on creating something like this, and I really like the Peren Hintz. So thank you for watching. This has been Watch All About, so don't forget to like, subscribe, leave a comment as well. Thank you so much guys for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.